Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. Today we're taking a look at Snap's newest card, Lin Lie Iron Fist. It's going to be a powerful addition to both move and bounce based decks. Lin Lie is a 2 cost for 2 power, with on reveal, summon the Sword of Fu Ji in another lane. The sword is another 2 power card that has an ongoing buff effect to give Lin plus 7 power if he is in its lane. If this sword looks familiar to you, it's because you might recognize it from being wielded by Lin in his first appearance in Marvel Snap as Swordmaster. A big part of Lin's initial journey after donning the Iron Fist mantle involves reclaiming the sword, so it's really cool that his new card has found a way to implement that flavor via his gameplay. So now that we know a little bit about Lin, let's take a look at the decks that are best suited to utilize his abilities. Lin represents 11 power for only 2 energy, which is pretty huge, and that can get even more out of control if we're able to get multiple copies of him or the sword. The most obvious home for him is going to be decks that are focused around moving their own cards. This version of mid-range move has been really popular recently and has been one of my more favorite decks to play in the game, and it seems likely that Lin is going to be a really powerful addition to it. The game plan of this deck is focused around moving your cards around the board to increase their power output, while also reducing your opponent's power with things like Spider-Punk. Like most move decks, this deck gains an edge by making it hard for your opponent to predict where exactly all your points are going to go going to the final turn of the game. The thing also really appreciates Lin's addition to the deck, as he really wants you to be able to get more cards on board to fill out his lane, so that way you can trigger his end of turn effect and destroy one of your opponent's cards in his lane. He acts as one of our main finishers for the deck outside of our other scaling threats. And our other main finisher here is Juggernaut, who can often close out a lane you're already winning if you have priority going into the final turn. Miles is here as well to get a little bit more payoff from us moving all our things around, giving us a decently cheap, sizable body that helps fill out the lanes for the thing. As someone who's always enjoyed the style of mid-range move decks, I think Lee looks like he's going to be a powerful addition to it. Taking things in a different direction is Move Bounce. Move Bounce has been a very powerful archetype throughout most of the game's history, but after some of the more recent nerfs to things like Sparky, it's kind of fallen off many players' radar. But with the addition of Lin, I think there's a very solid reason here to revisit the archetype. Since Lin gives us another sword every time he comes down, being able to bounce him to hand with Toxin or Beast and then play him again lets us get multiple swords down on the board. And thanks to Frigga, we could even get multiple copies of Lin to pair with our multiple swords. This deck already runs a bunch of ways of moving things around the board, including the original Iron Fist, as well as Ghost Spider, Madam, Sparky, and Doctor Strange. So it shouldn't be too hard to align Lin with his sword in the same lane. Even after the nerfs to his power, Human Torch is still a very powerful scaler in this deck when paired with another power boosting mechanic that Sparky or Hulkbuster can provide. And he and Dagger act as our main scalers outside of Lin and his swords. Shadow King's probably the most popular tech card in the meta right now, so the fact that Lin gets around that is also really nice, and since we have bounce tools, we can bounce our other cards that get green boosted power, so that way we can play them safely on the final turn while throwing priority, so you don't have to worry about as many tech cards from your opponents. It's no secret that move bounce decks have always been some of the harder decks to play in the game, so it's a great choice if you're up for learning something new and want to master all the different challenging lines this deck can present to you. And then for our final deck, we have a slightly different take on the mid-range move list we saw earlier. This one aims to cap out its curve a little bit lower, opting to not run any 5-drops and instead double down on some cheaper cards that help our game plan. The main change here is Silk. Silk is really powerful with Batroc and Hydra Stomper, and with her moving around multiple times per turn, can make both of those cards into threats that just win the lane on their own. Web Slinging provides us another way to move Lin into the sword lane, and Stegron's one of those cool surprise options that your opponents won't often play around. You can use him to clog up an opponent's lane that's already pretty full, or just to bonk a card out of his lane into a lane that you might not be competing for. Prowler's the other addition here. I've really liked the Prowler skills, and since we have lots of ways to move cards around, they'll often be free, and free cards are just good most of the time. Other than that, the deck plays pretty similarly. We're just trying to get our cards moving around the board, get our various scaling payoffs for that, and use our bigger 4-drops to help close out the game on the final turn. This one is a little bit more chaotic than the other list. That's just the nature of running Silk in these decks, but generally that is the risk and reward with these Silk-focused lists, as you have a bigger potential ceiling for how high your points can go, but at the added risk of not necessarily always going to be able to predict where some of your cards are going. Going into this season, Lin Lie wasn't one of the highest cards on my radar. Since we have so many cool big dragons that are coming out this season, he wasn't a card that I was paying a lot of attention to at first. But after actually getting to play with the card and explore how he functions in these archetypes, I've been pleasantly surprised with him, and I think he's going to be a great addition to the game. That's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about Lin in the comments below. Love to see if you have some cool deck ideas that weren't featured here. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.